Good morning, everybody. Nice and early on this, Tuesday morning. Good to see y'all. Just doing a couple last minute social media posts on Facebook and Twitter. Get the word out. Cool beans. So hopefully we'll have some people joining us real soon. So welcome to day 3 of my 28 days of smart poker study. Or smart poker study, just poker study, but we're trying to do it smartly. So day 3 today, here's the agenda. Every day from now on, I'm just going to try to dive right in. We only have an hour, maybe an hour 15 if I go a little bit long, but we only have an hour, so I'm going to dive right in. Day 3, we're going to start with the hand reading practice. The second thing, we're going to go over some lessons learned from Splitsuit's Calling in Poker, a simple pre-flop guide. Next, we'll analyze my week cutoff hands and see how they fare versus calling ranges, the hands that I open with from the cutoff. And then the fourth thing, we'll go over my warm-up strategies for today's play session later on. So let's see here. First off is the hand reading practice. Let's see here. Let's go this year. Open up Flopzilla. Some hands that went to showdown is what we've got going on. Whoops. How do I mute that puppy? There we go. Good. So let's see here. Yep, so these are the different hands. Oh, I got it sorted by hand here. I was doing some reviewing yesterday, so not session. I always go by position. There we go. So on the button here, what did we do yesterday? Amount 1. I think we hit this ace-8 suited. So let's look at this 7-6 suited this today. We've got, do I have Flopzilla open? Flopzilla open there. We've got 7-6 of spades, a very pretty hand. One that we like calling with, and my guess is I'll be calling here, possibly 3-betting. Yeah. Oh, holy cow! I did 3-bet. Good. So you can see his fold to 3-bet is 100% over 2 out of 2 instances. That's good. He's a tight, aggressive player. He is spewy. His name is Spewy. And he decides to call. Okay, great. So what hands open and then call our 3-bet? So right now we're studying, of course, 2-bet calling ranges. But in this instance, we might as well just, assign him a good 3-bet calling range here. So let's look at some 3-bet calling range that we got. He is a nitty taggish player altogether. Those are about my stats that I'm currently running at a 16-13 right now. So let's say he has that nitty range. I'm not a fan of such a nitty range for the guy. He does like to 4-bet 20%. He 3-bets at 4%. Let's see how 3-bets 11%, 12% from the small blind. Nowhere else so far. It's only 140 hands. I want to give him a little bit wider range than just such a narrow range right there. I think he would come back over the top. Well, let's take a look. 8s are better. This seems like a better range. We can add a couple other pocket pairs. Let's add a couple other suited connectors to this. Maybe not king, queen off, ace, jack off. We'll keep that in for now. We'll probably whittle it down at some point, depending on the action that comes street by street. But let's go with this right now. We have the 7-6 suited. So before we go any further, let's see what our equity is. 7-6 suited is only 32%. It's not the kind of hand, ultimately, by making that 3-bet I just did, I didn't want him to call. But he called. Now we got to go post flop. Now we have to have a plan for that. And then we just end up having not good equity. We don't have good equity against most ranges with 7-6 suited, but 7-6 suited does flop pretty well. Let's just take a look real quick. This range hits the flop 36.5%, which is decent. 7-6 suited probably hits, before I click it, probably hits 32% of the time. Or 28, even worse than I thought. Wow. So Jack 10 suited. Jack 10, 41%. That hits much better because it's so low. Well, I guess it doesn't have many top pair hands is the thing. That's why it's so low. The higher you get in rankings, the more likely you have a top pair hand within your holding there. So let's go this. Let's take that off. Let's add the 7s back again. Yeah, I think 6s and below would fold most of the time. King queen suited would probably call. Ace queen suited call. Let's put ace king offsuit as a calling hand here. Let's take ace. Let's keep ace jack in for now. We're only starting him off if we take this out of the range. We're starting him off with 78 combos right here. Oh, this only blocks a few of those. It only takes away 3 combos out of his pocket 7s right here. So we have just about zero blockers to his range. He has a strong range right now. He's definitely ahead of us. Let's see what happens on the flop. And remember, 3-bet pot right here. Okay, so queen 4 7. Queen of spades, 4 of hearts, 7 of clubs. Yep, cool. So this is the flop right now. So we have middle pair as well as a backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. Not the best of hands right now, but he does fold 100% of the time, which is 2 out of 2. So that in itself is a good time that he folds a lot to c-bets. But here's the problem: he's called us so far with a very narrow range that should not be too scared on this board, right? Some of these Broadway hands, yes, they will be folding right there. Not the queens, of course, but ace king could possibly fold, and the ace jacks could possibly fold as well. But all of these cards, he either hit a set, he has a second pair, or even I took queens out of his range. Oh, you know, we should keep queens in his range, because I think he's probably calling with queens, not 4-betting. He's 4-betting probably these hands right here, but calling that one. 3. Would he 4-bet? He 4-bets 20%. Let's see what he's 4-bet with. We didn't see his 4-betting hand. He's 4-bet before, but it didn't end up going to showdown. So 3-bet out of position with jacks. 3-bets with jacks. So let's say he will 4-bet with queens. But let's keep his calling range in with the ace kings. Okay, so his 4-betting hands are just the queens or better, and he's calling with all this other stuff, which makes sense. So let's see here. On this flop, queen 7-4 rainbow flop, we've got 47% equity. Or 48%, and that's great. That's just because we basically hit a pair right there. We have a little backdoor equity, but that's not adding too much to our equity. The hands that we are beating currently are simply all of his broadways. Oh, non-queen Broadway, so 1, 2, 3, 4 different hands, you know, for a total of 32 different combos right there that we're currently beating. So which isn't that much. So we're beating you know, a little less than half of his full range. That's why we've got about 48% equity right there. Yeah, so this is not a good flop for us, not so bad either. But he folds 100% of the time. So if he whiffed it with those broadways, we can bet here and get him off the hand, I believe. So he checks to us and we check. I think, see, I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I don't know when this hand was from, but I think that this was a good opportunity to bet. I 3-bet pre-flop. I've got to keep up the appearance that I have the aces, the kings, maybe even the queens for a set, or even the jacks for an under pair that is not too scared of him, because if I have jacks, he's going to fold his 8s, 9s, and 10s right here if he believes I have jacks, you know. So I should have kept up appearances right here. He's a tight aggressive player, folds on the flop so far. I should have bet. Even though I didn't have much, I should have thrown out that one street of betting right here. By checking, the only things I would be checking are complete whiffs, like maybe ace-king offsuit, even ace-king suited if they were like diamonds or something, and I didn't like my hand, or an underpair, or a set of queens that I would have 3-bet with pre-flop. Yeah, so the other queen hits, and now I bet 225. So what does that mean? What queens? Maybe I 3-bet with ace-queen, and I wanted to sucker him in slow play. I guess it's possible. King queen? King queen's possible too. But what am I telling him with this bet? I'm not fond of this bet at all. Oh, sorry. Before we got to the turn, we have to decide if there's any changes to make. So he checked initially. I think he would check with his entire range right here. I don't think there's any reason for him to donk lead. It's not like he's expecting to miss out on value. I 3-bet him pre-flop. He can expect me to have aces or kings quite often. If he hits some kind of weird, not thinking about this range, but if he hits some kind of weird 2-pair like he called with queen 7 suited, or if he has an open-ender like with 5-6 suited or something like that, he can easily just check and want to see another street. If he has a set of queens, even though it's not in his range, if he has something like that, he'll check as well. Most of the time, most players would check with a really strong and with weak hands right here. So I don't read anything into his check, and I'm not going to delete anything from his range because he checked right here, or a set of 7s as well, which is in the range. But anything outside of what we assigned him that he could have that's a monster hand, he's checking everything, so I can't read into that. Queen hits, check, and I bet, and he decides to call. Okay, what calls on this queen? Now, first off, I checked on the flop. I look weak. I bet, dang it, once again, less than half pot, just like yesterday. What a terrible bet right here. That just says weakness to me. Yeah, it wasn't too long ago that I decided to up my bets to 2/3 pot. This is when I was betting roughly half quite often, and it's just ugly. I'm not a fan of it. So he check calls, less than half pot bet. What is he check calling with? Oh, whoops, I didn't put it on the board. Queen of clubs. Queen of clubs. So what is he check calling with? I think full houses. Yeah, that 7's full of queens is the only full house. He's probably check calling. He didn't get value from me on the flop, so he's probably raising with a full house is my guess. So I don't think he has a full house here, because he missed out on value and he wants to get the full stack in. He's check raising with the full house, or even donk leading with the full house to try to get value, because he doesn't want me to check behind the turn. No straights. 3 of a kind. Those queens, are those check calling? I think those are check raising. There's nothing for him to be scared of. He just hit trip queens. If he has a king queen or an ace queen, he's not scared of any single queen I have other than pocket queens. So I think those are check raising as well. Pocket pair below top pair, those are definitely check calling. Mid pair, weak pair, ace highs. I mean, there's ace high flush draws, but there's no ace high kind of a straight draw stuff, so ace highs aren't doing it. Let's say flush draws are check calling. No flush draw. We don't need to mark that, you know. An open end, oh, there is no open end straight draw. Great. So that is what is calling us. Whoops, I shouldn't have done that because we didn't do the. Let's not click that. Let's take that off. On the flop, 22% of hands pass. Oh, no, wait. We want to keep everything in. I should have done this first. Everything 100% is staying in good. Now the turn queen comes. Now here we go. The flush draw, open, and straight draw. Yeah, so that is what is staying in, or what is check calling us on the turn to stay into the river. Bam. So we whittled it down from... There we go. From, was it 78 combos to start with to 26 combos or so. Not too shabby. Oh, oops. So he check calls us. Now the deuce comes and he just checks. Okay, what is just checking right here? Just checking. Those aren't even in the range. Pocket pair below top pair. Ace highs, if he has any, I guess those were flush draws. Those are just checking as well because they whiffed. Flush draws are checking. No flush draws. Yeah, everything is just checking right here. 100% of his range on the, what is it, deuce of hearts. On that deuce of hearts. So basically at this point, 3 of a kind isn't checking. So yeah, at this point we only have because his whiffs are still in, you know, we have a 47% equity. So we're basically chopping with the guy. I think the only way to win this pot is to try to bluff him off and to try to rep something, but at the same time, what can we rep? What can we logically rep here? The deuce hit. We didn't have pocket deuces the whole time. I guess it's possible because we made a weak bet on the turn. But, you know, I don't think he's going to fold to any of our bets with any of those mid pairs that he likely has. I'm going to say he's got one of those hands right there. So it's not worth a bet, and I'm glad I didn't bet right there. Just hoping that he has like a whiffed flush draw, a whiffed backdoor flush draw from the turn. But pocket jacks, okay. Pocket jacks are in the range, yeah. So we did a good job here. We whittled them down from, I think it was started at 78 combos with all of this. 78 combos, yep, and then down to 33. So we've taken away more than half of his combos through the ranging process, which is a good thing. We did it right. This is another hand of some bad plays that I made on the flop and on the turn. I should have bet that flop, which he would have called, obviously. He still would have called, but then I could have bet again on the turn because that queen scare card came. Could have bet again and possibly could have gotten him to fold at that point. Yeah, so that's what I should have done. I screwed that hand up, but after the fact, ranging it right now, we done good. All right, so let's see here. Where's that Word document? So 7-6 suited, so we don't try to do that one again. Keep it under control. So this is the article that I studied last night. late at night when I sent off that email to everybody. So it's called Calling in Poker, a Simple Pre-Flop Guide. This was done by Splitsuit. Great article. You should definitely read it, especially if you've never thought about your calling ranges, if you've never realized that calling ranges could be a leak for yourself. So the link was sent out in last night's email. I'll send it out in today's email again, or you could just probably go to splitsuit.com and type that in right there and find it. But so here's the lessons that I learned from this article today. A big leak he encounters, Splitsuit, from his students is their pre-flop calling of 2 bets and 3 bets. And I've encountered the same thing with myself and with my students as well. It's a super huge leak. 3 important stats to look at: call pre-flop 2-bet, cold call 2-bet pre-flop, which I talked about yesterday. That's not so important. Cold calling is when somebody auto posts blinds or they limp in and then they call a 2-bet, an isolation raise. But that's really just not that important. Call pre-flop 2-bet gives you enough information. You're not going to look at this stat and look at that stat and make a different decision based on the cold call stat. It's just not important at all. Just look at that. But call steal stat is important for sure. Let's see here, because calling a steal is when you're in the blinds and you're calling it from the cut off the button or the small blind. So it's a very specific circumstance you're looking at there. So over 15% on these stats, it tends to be a leak. And let's look at this percentage right now. Let's clear this. So for me, my call pre-flop 2-bet, I'm getting close to it in the big blind. I do feel that my big blind calling is a little bit of a weak spot for me. It's something I do need to work on for sure. But in every other position, I'm pretty darn tight. I would prefer 3-betting over calling most of the time, especially if they fold a lot to 3 bets and I have position, that kind of thing. So there's that. And then where is the call steal stat over here? So 13.8, 13.8, 6.4, 7.44. They're basically, pretty much the same. I'm not going to look at call pre-flop 2-bet and then the call steal 13.4, 13.8, or 13.9 doesn't tell me any difference, in the way I play. I play basically the same when in calling from the blinds, whether it's an early position, middle position, or a steal position doing the opening. But I do call steals from the small blind a little bit more often than I do early position from the small blind. And I think the reason for that is I'm just slightly tighter when the raise is coming from somebody in earlier position. When it's coming from somebody in later position, I feel that they're weaker, so I call with a little bit wider range right there. Let's see here, over 50. But even lower percentages could be leaks. So you've got to get in there and research your calls to find any leaks that the numbers may be hiding. For example, an 8% calling 2 bets sounds strong, but maybe you're calling with too many crap hands and you shouldn't be, and you couple that with a wide 3-betting range. So let's say, you're not calling that much, but you're showing way more aggression than you should. What if you're one of those super loose aggressive guys that are 3-betting like 10, 12, 15%? Well, that's another part of your leak. Sure, you're not calling that often, but you're 3-betting too often. So these two leaks kind of go hand in hand. You want to analyze your win rates with specific hands. And let's do this real quick with the deuces through 6s and some middle suited connectors. What we want to do is look at specifically, I'll show you how to find this here, more filters. When you look at hand values, whole card range selection, hold'em range, deuces through 6s right there. Add that to the filter. So it's only going to look for hands where I was dealt deuces through 6s. Let's add another filter. Action opportunities pre-flop, call to 2-bet. Add that to filter. Now, what we're going to do is look at it in every position right here. We'll probably see some ugly numbers in the blinds, but possibly, hopefully, some positive numbers in the later positions. We'll hope. And once again, this is also a very small sample. You can see it only returned 24 instances where I called with deuces through 6s. It's a really small sample size. It's hard to read into this too much, but we can see down here. Let's look at first in position on the button. Okay, so far this year to date, when I've been calling deuces through 6s, they've all been losing instances. And I'm basically calling to set mine, right? That's the only reason to call in the set mine with these. It's not like I feel like my deuces are going to hold up versus ace king versus king queen kind of a thing. So the open from an early position doesn't like to fold to 3 bets. Oh, it's only 1 out of 2 right now. But he's getting to be a loose, aggressive player. So I'm calling just to set mine. I'm getting plenty of implied odds behind to make the call. Remember, you need 20x, so 20 times the 75 cents is $2, $15 behind, but we have $20 behind, so we're good here. And he calls, and I completely whiff, got a gutter on a monotone board. This is a good spot for me to bet and I do bet. And he calls, and I probably just, well, a third diamond, I just give up here. And he bets, and I fold. Okay, yep, so be it. It happens. So that was a set mine turned into a little bit bad money thrown after bad is what happened right there. So not a good instance. Let's take a look in the big blind. You can see I'm positive here. It's probably a function of hitting a few sets, you know. I hit a set of 4s, hit a set of 3s. Didn't hit a set of 4s, but I somehow won this hand anyway. Called the set mine, got plenty of odds behind. Didn't hit my set, check, check. I bet. Oh, and he folds. Okay, just a tiny little turn bet when he showed weakness on the flop. Yep. So he might have had just he might have had like deuces himself or like 5s or something that just did not want to, just didn't want to hero call down or whatever. Yeah, good. So that's the, oh, let's take a look at these. Got one hand where I hit a set, got a little bit of value. Oh, this is one thing interesting too. When you're set mining, yeah, great, you hit your set. I want to get value. I hope to get value. But sometimes, look what happens. I hit a set, and I only win $1.83. I only win 7 big blinds. It's not really much. It wasn't worth it hitting that set. You can see this one set mining, hitting the set in the small blind. Oh, somebody followed. Thank you very much. I wasn't looking over there. I appreciate it. Vader, 1931. Nice. Okay, so are you 84 years old? Or are you 6 years old? 1931. So we've got this one set hit, but it didn't make up for all these other set minings that totally whiffed, which is a bummer. That's why you want that 20x implied odds behind, because when you hit your set, you want to at least have the chance to make a lot of money for all those set minings that you miss right there. Yep, and I just got lucky in the big blind right here. These set minings paid. And then so you could see overall my set minings, they've paid off. Out of 24 hands, I'm up 63, 64 big blinds per 100 hands, which is pretty good right there. Happy about that. So that's that. Let's go back to more filters, delete those. What did I say? 7.6 through 9.8. See, these are the kinds of pseudo connectors that people like to call with a lot. Oh, let's add 6.5 to it. Might as well see what happens here. Whoops. Called. Yep, good. Aha, $2.70 positive, 100 big blinds per 100 hands. Not too shabby right there. So we can see I'm doing pretty decent. 8.7, 8.7, just completely whiffed. You can see there's nothing on those flops at all. 9.8, hit the flush draw. What happened? Oh, I probably didn't hit. Probably had to pay one street or so of value at some point. So against a loose aggressive player, I don't have any stats on him, but I think this is a great spot with the backdoor straight draw and the flush draw. 4, 5, 6, 7, yeah, backdoor straight, or 10 queen as well. I mean, there's lots of different straight cards that can come. 4, 5. So if I hit a 6, if I hit a 7, if I hit a 10, if I hit a queen, I pick up some drawing equity. So I love the hearts. Even a 9 or 8 isn't bad. This guy's a loose aggressive guy so far. That doesn't mean he has a jack or he has an overpair. So he could have 2 random cards if I hit a 9 and 8. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, queen, or a heart. I have 7 different equity outs in this instance. This is a great hand, a great spot to check raise. Let's see what I do. Shucks, I just call. No, it's a great spot to check raise. I should have. Great. And then, so by check raising right there, I rep a really strong hand. By hitting that 6 on the turn, it adds some equity to me. Now I definitely have a gut shot with the flush draw still. And if I would have check raised, he could have called. He's a loose aggressive guy. He could have called with 2 over cards, king, queen, ace, 10. Ace 10 isn't 2 over cards, but 1 over card. He could have definitely called with that, which currently beats me, but it's not like they have a made hand. I still have a 9 or an 8 for possible outs. And then I completely whiff. I should have followed that turn up with a bet right there. I just screwed myself by doing that. And then he bets. I whiffed. I have nothing. I lost my opportunity to get aggressive and take it down. And I fold, of course. What a shame. Yeah, so that's another leak of mine right there. Not staying aggressive, or not getting aggressive originally when I should have on the flop, and then not continuing aggression on that turn. Should have done it. Yeah, whatever. Terrible, terrible. So let's take a look at the one winning hand. 9-8, flopped an open-ender. Oh, only $1.80. I probably pushed him off with some aggression. Called with the 9-8. I'm good with that call. I like the call. Flopped the open-ender. low open-ender. If he has ace-king and if the queen hits, he has a higher straight, but whatever. You don't want to look for monsters under the bed. You always prefer the high open-ender. You want the nut straight draws, but open-ender still is nothing to shake a stick at, especially on a board like this. That deuce doesn't help anybody, and so what's he bet right there? 88 cents, half pot. And I call. I would have been fine with a raise as well, but the guy only c-bets 53%. That means he has a pretty good mixture of bluffs with value with his range. If he would have been c-betting over, like, let's say over 60, 65%, I think a raise would have been really good, a really high likelihood of getting him off of his hand here. I have 133 hands. Let's see what his fold. In position c-bet fold to a raise is 0 so far, out of only one instance. Yeah. And the jack of hearts hits. He checks. I should bet. Good, and that takes it down, yeah. So I could be calling in that instance with a lot of different jacks. King jack, queen jack, ace jack that I called pre-flop, that I just called the flop with, and then the jack, because he doesn't have one, scares him off the pot, which is bueno. Yeah, so that's how I'm doing so far. So in the two instances where I'm calling for set mining and with speculative suited connectors, I'm doing good so far. It's a small sample, though. Analyze the bigger the sample, the more reliable. Look at set mining hands, out of position versus in position. Broadway hands as well, we could have done a little search on or a filter on. Would a 3-bet have been better in some of these instances? That's a great question to ask. Just any of those instances. Suited connectors are great hands to 3-bet. They don't expect it. They don't see it coming. Once they know you can do it, sure, they'll expect it. But like with that hand we just saw, that would have been a great one to 3-bet pre-flop. You just would not have seen that coming. I probably would have taken it down right there. When you're facing a raise, you've got three options: fold, call, or raise. Any of them can be good, but which is best? Your decision should always hinge upon where you think you can make the most money right now with this decision, for sure. And then when you're calling steals from the blinds, this is a very possible leaky area, and you got to look at that win rate. So let's do that real quick. So more filters, action opportunity. Oh, pre-flop calls. Called steal, nice and simple. Oh, but we also want called steal, but I also want, oh, no, right here, opportunities, posted small blind, oh, posted any blind or ante is what I want. So when you're looking at win rates, if I would have just looked at called steal, oh, well, called steal's in the big blind, small blind anyway. Don't even need that. Oh, dag nabbit. Now I got rid of it. Forgot. So pre-flop calls, call to steal is obviously in the blinds only. So I don't need to select being in the blinds, you know. Hey, I'm doing pretty good when I'm calling steals. Made 14 bones, 65 big blinds per 100 hands. I'm doing good here. Let's take a look at some of the hands I'm calling steals with. Let's start in the small blind. Sorted by whole cards. Okay, I'm calling the ace queens. Called with king queen, king king one time. Oh, look at that. And I lost on the ace high flop. Yeah, I probably gave up. Probably wanted to. 10s calling, 9s calling. 10s, see, only two instances of calling right here. I guarantee I 3-bet with 10s a heck of a lot too. 3-bet with 9s sometimes as well, depending on who is making the steal. 7-6, yeah, all these make sense as calls. Yeah, you know, you got to mix them in. You can't always 4-bet or 3-bet with pocket kings. You got to mix it in sometimes. 10s, I do calls and 3-bets. Let's take a look at the big blind here. Sorting by whole cards, ace queen, ace jack, decent calls. Ace jack offsuit, I'm not big fans of. It depends on who made the call or who made the raise. If they could be raising with every single ace suited and offsuit, ace jack is not a bad one at all. And especially if they're raising with like king 10 suited and queen 5 suited and that kind of stuff. It's good calls. It's also good 3-bets with aces. Or not aces, but ace X hands. Let's see. Hey, Philippe, you made it. Good to see you, buddy. I'm sorry, just now looked at the chat. I've been so focused on this. So some other calls out of the big blind here. King, queen, king, jack, king, 9, king 6 offsuit. Why did I call that? Ooh, Fook variance, huh? Well, he's a loose aggressive guy on the button. He bet. I decided to just call. I'm not a fan of the 3-bet here, but I probably just wanted to play a hand with this guy, loose aggressive guy. Only c-bets 33% of the time. I think that's probably why I called, because he's flop honest. I can check most flops, and if he decides to check behind, take it away on the turn. It's only 50 hands, but at least so far he's honest, you know. Oh, he's also honest versus c-bet, so this guy is probably just pretty flop honest in general. Flop honest c-better, flop honest versus c-better, great. King 6, I flop nothing. Backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. He checks, and then, oh, and I hit at my pair. But I bet anyway, and I would have bet anyway, because he's flop honest. And he folds. Hey, lovely. Okay. So, you know, it's not a pretty hand at all. I wouldn't suggest anybody call. But if you're calling based on your opponent, based on how you can take advantage of them post-flop, based on some of their weaknesses, based on their pre-flop weaknesses, yeah, make the call. If you feel it's right, go ahead and do it. Oh, look at another one. King 5 off. Queen 9, Jack 9, Jack 9. Oh, look at that. I hit a flush and I lost a mega pot. Of course, I check call. I would have liked to check raise right there. Obviously, if I lost, he has a higher flush. So he probably would have stayed in. Where's your stats, buddy? Maybe it's my first hand with the guy. No stats popping up. $2 betting less than half pot. Man. And then, of course, $1.99. Oh, and he makes a huge raise. What, am I thinking he's raising here with a 3 for a straight? Is he raising with like a 4, 5, 6, a 7, 8 with a straight on the flush draw on the ace high board? Is he raising with 2 pair? Ace 6 or something? That hit on the, and you know, most people are not going to raise here. What do I have? King, queen. I have the 3rd nut flush. I probably made a crying call here. I would have really preferred a check raise on that flop. Because he bet even half. How do you even get that amount? Do you type in purposely 0.52? Because if you hit the half pot button, it's 0.55. This guy does not like his hand. He sized it smaller purposely to lose less with his bluff. And I freaking should have check raised. Man, it's so easy sometimes seeing this stuff after the fact. But the fact that I noticed this after the fact hopefully will work its way into my in-game mind, you know. So that I start doing it more often, get aggressive. But man, that's a good spot to be aggressive on the flop. Good spot to continue aggression on the turn. Because if he has that king or queen high flush draw, this is the only way to get him to fold, you know. And he's currently beating me, even the king and queen high, because I don't have a pair. He doesn't have a pair. He's beating me anyway. So if we get to showdown, we both check the river without whiffing. I would have lost anyway. The only way for me to win this hand is to bet at it on the flop and turn. Ace hits. Less than half pot. So I was following his lead, making a smaller pot bet. Man, I should have folded right there. He put me on a flush. My check calling. Okay, oh, wow. He had them both covered. Yeah. So I had the 3rd. And, you know, if I wonder if I would have folded with a 10 high or a 9 high. Terrible play. Shouldn't have done that. That's not a bad call pre-flop. Jack 9. You know, it's just, I wish I wouldn't have done that. So Jack 9, 10s, Jack 7, won a little money from that. Okay, so we can see all these various calling steals. So far, I'm doing good, but I've made a few blunders. Look at that, $14 on that one hand. I was negative $12. If I would have just got aggressive on the flop in the turn, I could have taken it down before that river hit, and I could have been positive. What, I don't know, $3 or $4 or something. So I'd be up to I don't know, $18, $19 here. Whatever, happens. Cool. So that's some call, steal stuff. So that's the kind of things that you want to think about. The kinds of hands that I've been calling out of the blinds are oftentimes what my opponents call. But I've seen my opponents call super wide ranges. You can see my calling pre-flop out of the blinds is pretty small. You see some guys calling out of the small blind. You see them calling like 20, 25%. Out of the big blind, you see them calling 40, 50% of the time, which is just crazy. You want to target those fish. You want to raise with all of your decent to good hands, of course. And by decent, I mean, you know, all the different broadways, the weaker broadways and stuff, because these guys call with weaker queens and weaker jacks when you've got the king queen and the queen jack and jack 10, that kind of stuff. So you definitely want to keep raising, put pressure on those blinds, and have, you know, you're happy when they call with those weaker hands and you get to the flop with a slightly stronger range than they have. That's one thing we talked about yesterday. When you're calling, you need to have a stronger range than when you are open raising. But most of these fishy players, they have really small open raising ranges, but wide calling ranges. They do it completely opposite. They're calling when they shouldn't. With hands, they shouldn't. So take advantage of that. Let's see here. Where are we at? Calling steals from, look at that win rate. Yep, so my win rate was good when my stealing from the blinds. And then Splitsuit gave within the article a great list of questions to think about when the opportunity to call pre-flop arises. So before calling, ask yourself if you get 3-bet for value, what will the stack to pot ratio be if you call? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go through all the questions, but as you're doing your own, right now I'm looking at my opponent's calling and my opening hands versus their calling. That's what this whole week is about. But if you are going through and studying your own calling, if you think you're calling too often and stuff, these are the kinds of questions that you want to ask yourself as you're reviewing hands and as you're playing your sessions with the calling 2-bet focus in mind as you play. Okay, so let's look at some weak hands from the cutoff. Let's look at hands where I'm opening from the cutoff and I get called, but let's compare those weakest of hands. I'm not going to look at my ace king. I'll rather look at my, ace 7 that I'm opening from the cutoff and that kind of a thing. So we'll take a look at that, how those fare versus different calling ranges that I can expect to be called with. So more filters. I am making the pre-flop 2-bet, baby. Well, let's just look at this real quick. Save and apply filters. So when I'm making that pre-flop 2-bet, great. Up $130 big blinds per 100 hands, which is lovely. In the big blind, I'm actually losing when I'm 2-betting. It's only 6 hands or so. But you can see why I'd be raising when it's limp to me with all these hands. I wouldn't say, looking at just looking at the hand strength, not looking at the players, I'm just fine with these. But in every other position, I'm I'm positive with my opens. So let's see, that's pre-flop. So let's look at just the cutoff here. Now this part I can never remember. I always got to figure it out. Hand details, player position, pre-flop. I always got to read this. Button is 0 relative to the button counterclockwise. 8 is always the big blind. 8, 9. So the cutoff is 1. Exactly 1. Bam, in the cutoff, 118 hands. My win rate just here is 154. Great, so I'm doing a really good job opening in the cutoff. 118, we're looking at all the hands here. So, of course, I'm opening aces. What is the weakest? Yesterday we looked at ace deuce suited. Let's look at the weakest offsuit ace I'm opening with. Ace 10, ace 8, ace 5. Okay, ace 5 offsuit. Let's see. Oh, there's an ace 4 offsuit. I'm not going to look at ace deuce offsuit. Let's look at just something else. Let's look at the aces that most people don't want to open because they have no straight possibility and they have the worst kicker, Well, the worst kicker that's not a straight possible card, ace 6 offsuit right here. So let's take a look at how that fares versus different calling ranges. Ace 6 offsuit. Now, 2-bet calling ranges. What do we looked at a 5% range yesterday. Yeah. Oh, first, before we do that, ace deuce. We got to get rid of this so there's less, so there's no blocker. So we have the full 12 combos of ace deuce offsuit here. Let's see here. 12 combos of it. This hits the flop only 20% of the time. So this is actually not ace deuce. What am I doing? Ace 6, baby. So ace 6 offsuit only hits the flop 22% of the time. This is a really crappy hand. When you hit top pair with pocket aces, you're not too happy. There's not much, you don't like your 6 kicker. You could be outkicked by a lot of cards that call you. It's not a fun hand unless you hit 2 pair with it, which is really good. As well as if your top pair is a 6, that means all the cards are below it. If your callers have, baby cards or even middle suited connectors or just middle connectors, or if they have the baby pocket pairs, they hit a set, they hit some kind of a gut shot or even open ender when your 6 is the top pair hand. So it's just really not a good hand to go post flop with. When you raise with this hand, you're basically in the cutoff, you're basically steaming with it. You have an ace. That means everyone else has less aces in their range. You block their aces. So your steal is a little bit more likely to work. So this hand right here, opening in the cutoff, is a straight steal. I don't want to go post flop, but it's good to know ace 6 offsuit hits 22% of the time. So let's go with ace 6 offsuit here versus a calling range. Let me see here. What was the format I hit yesterday? Here's yesterday's notes up here. Weak hands from the cutoff. Cutoff and how they fare. We're going to go A6 off. Ace deuce off hits 22. 6 off. A6 off hits only 22% of the time. We'll leave the rest of this here. We'll type in our findings in a little bit. So, oops. Okay, so A6 off versus a very small calling range. This could be anybody, just a very nitty player who wants to set mine but doesn't want to 3-bet. So we can say that they don't have those. We'll leave queens in. We'll just see how this hand fares versus the queens are below. So right here, this range hits 32% of the time. Great. We only have blockers with the A6. We only have blockers to one hand in this range, which, I mean, all of these other queens through sevens, which are better pairs than if we hit top pair with sixes, are still in the range. Our hand only has 35% equity, which is pretty interesting that we have even that much. I guess just the ace gives us equity on a lot of different boards. If they have pocket nines, if they have pocket sixes, they could be... I guess it's just our overcard, along with all these undercards that are below both of our cards right here. So it's the one overcard with those. What if it was like a Jack 6, for example? Much less 33%. Okay, that's what I would have expected with the A6 off. I would have expected closer to 30% equity as opposed to 35% in this instance. So just not a good... not good equity at all. So you do not want to be called by a range so narrow as this. Actually, I'm going to put this over here. I'll show you what I type in a little bit later on, you know. Well, actually, I'll keep it here. I think I can keep them on the same tab and just go back and forth like I did yesterday. Yeah, that works. Oh, hey, thanks. It's Dana Jackson Pro. Thank you very much. I appreciate you. Your fanage. You're being a fan. Thank you very much, Dana. I appreciate that. Let's see here. I don't know if your name is Dana. It's Dana. It's Dana Jackson Poker. Oh, okay. Yep. Dana Jackson. So anyway, we've got the A6 offsuit versus the 5% calling range. It's just not a good opportunity, not a good situation to be in. But if we have position, if they're calling with this kind of range out of the blinds, great. We can take it away with a C-bet. We could take it away by, or we can get value out of them if we hit our ace kind of a thing against this kind of range right here. So it's not the worst of situations. Of course, we were trying to steal. We got called. So be it. Let's see here. 35% equity versus 5% calling. Okay, that's versus the 5. What did we looked at? 13 and 30 yesterday, right? Yeah. So a 13% calling range right here, a bit wider. This kind of calling range makes more sense. This is what I'm often trying to call when I am when I'm in position versus the player. I don't always call. Sometimes I'm 3-betting some of these hands depending on who opens. Because like I said earlier, if you feel that a 3-bet is better than a call, go ahead and do it. But these are the hands that I could or would call with based on the opponent, or that I could possibly call based on the opponent. Oftentimes, for myself, I'm 3-betting those hands. Sometimes these as well because they're suited aces, and I feel that with the aces and with these ones as well. So all of those hands I just now took off, I'm occasionally 3-betting with. Most of these other hands I like to call with, occasionally 3-bet with the king-queen suited, occasionally with the 8s and 9s, but then most of the time if I'm calling, it's this range that I'm calling. But like I said, and like I showed you earlier, I do call plenty of times out of the blinds with other hands that don't fit this mold exactly, but that I feel that are good calls given the opponent that's raising, you know. So like I said yesterday, you have ranges you want to play. You set them up. Like I showed you this, my KISS 6 max ranges. So you have ranges that you play with, but you can always veer outside of those ranges. Too many players take those ranges super strictly. This is what I got to raise. This is what I got to call. This is what I got to 3-bet. No, situation by situation. The opponent you're up against is more important than the cards that you hold. Not more important, equally as important, I would say. Let's see here. So A6 versus the 13% range. Yep, we have 42% equity. Great. So you can see how much it jumps up for versus 13%. You can see how much it jumps up as the range gets wider. So before we select the 33% range, which, let me show you what that looks like. Bam, look how wide that puppy is. Let's picture in our mind, not picture in our mind, let's think about what we think that equity is going to be. When we increased this range here, it went from 35 to 42%, 7% jump. Now we're going to increase the calling range by more than double, and a lot of the hands are weaker hands. A lot of the hands are stronger aces, you know, the ace 7 and above, ace 7 and above offsuit as well over here. But most of the hands are weaker, you know. It's not like we're adding a lot of aces and kings, pocket aces through kings or queens in the range. So the hands that they're going to call us with are going to be much weaker. So our equity should jump up. My guess is it'll jump up to probably not the full 7%. I think it'll jump up to roughly like 6% or so. So let's put it at 48% is my guess. It's my guess. Dan, hey Dan, what's up, buddy? Oh, Dan A. Jackson, nice. Okay, cool beans. So holy stromboli, 52%. I was not prepared for that. This is the kind of thing that the more, hopefully that kind of thing will stick in my mind. The realization that it jumped up a crazy percentage, 10 full percentage points, because the range more than doubled here, which is great. I was off by 4%. So 52% equity versus 30% calling. Great. Yeah, that's pretty darn good. So, so you could see, depending on who the blinds are, when you got blinds that call a heck of a lot, you probably want to raise with every single ace because they're calling with all of these. Oftentimes, when your blinds are calling, they might not be calling with these suited double gappers, but maybe they'll be adding every single king in that calling range. Once again, I'm still at 52% equity versus this range right here. And if you couple such a wide calling range, if you couple that with some post-flop weaknesses, maybe they're turn honest or flop honest, maybe they always raise with their draws, maybe they always just show their hand face up. If they hit something strong, they'll check raise every time, or they'll donk lead every time, or they'll bet pot size bets, whatever the case is. If you know they have post flop weaknesses, if there's things that they do that you can automatically understand, that's the hand that you have based on that action. You want to play as many hands in position as those guys as you can. So that's why I'm looking at the cutoff here, because in the cutoff, I'm often trying to steal the position from the button, and my goal in opening is to get one of the two blinds to either fold or call with weaker hands. Is my goal when I'm opening from the button here, from the cutoff in this instance. Faux show. So that is the ace-6 offsuit. So you can see ace-6 is definitely worth opening from the cutoff. There's no reason not to open it from the cutoff unless your opponents are crazy aggressive three-betters, or the big blind calls a heck of a lot and you don't want to play out a position against him because he's really aggressive post-flop. There are some reasons to not raise the ace-6 offsuit, depending on the players that are left in the pot for sure. Let's see here. So, oh, that's right. So we looked at our ace. That's the worst offsuit ace. And I already explained these other offsuit aces here. So let's take a look at kings. We looked at a king. Well, let's see what else. We go as far as king 8, king 7, king 5, and then cut off king 4, king deuce. So we looked at king jack suited. Let's look at, this is the worst king I've opened, king 4 offsuit. Let's double check that it is the worst here. Clear, clear. King 4 suited versus king 4 offsuit. Oh, no, not king 4 suited, king deuce suited. It's 50-50 split, so between king deuce suited and king 4 offsuit. We looked at a suited king yesterday, so let's look at an offsuit king today. So we'll take a look at the king 4 offsuit today on this. So king 4 offsuit versus the 5% equity. Dang it, I haven't looked over there at the equity yet. Let's clear this. Let's put it on something, oh, let's just clear that. Bam. Okay, good. So what kind of equity is the king 4 offsuit going to have versus a 5%? We just saw that the ace-6 offsuit had 45% equity. I'm going to say that the king 4 offsuit is going to have a little bit less, but not super less, just a little bit less. I'm going to estimate it at 43% equity. Wait, did I get that right? Oh, in my mind I was at 40. Okay, 32% equity. Whoops, my bad. I was way off because I was thinking, what the heck? King 4 offsuit. Okay, king 4 offsuit has 32% equity versus a 5% range. Okay, 5% calling range right there. Yep, so you could see it's just not a great hand. That doesn't mean it's not a good open right here in this instance, but it's not a great hand. You're opening in the cutoff once again. You're trying to get folds for a lot of your steals, of course. It's not a hand I want to get calls with. So if I'm opening this, it's because most of the time it's because my blinds are foldy players and my button doesn't fight back as well. Let's look at 13% before we look at it. So 32%, last time it jumped up from 35 to 42%, a 7% increase when you increased the calling range. So let's say by going from 5 to 13%, it's going to jump up roughly the same 7%. So we'll put it at 39. I'll go 40%. I'll go 40% here. 36%. Man. 36% equity versus a 13% calling range. Yeah, so I guess one of the reasons why is because the hands that we added to this range, there's plenty of better kings, and there's a lot more plenty good aces. Plenty good. There's a lot better aces than the kings that we have right here. So last time with the ace 6 offsuit, when we bumped up our callers range, we added 1, 2, 3. We only added 6 hands that were just automatically better than ours. Now, when we bump it up to 13%, now we're adding 10 hands that are automatically better than our king right here. So the percentage doesn't jump up nearly as much for sure. Oh, thank you, Fearlessly Fly. I appreciate it. I should type that kind of stuff in. I don't know what the delay is here. Thank you all. Cool. So, King 4. Okay, so that's the 13%. Did I type it in? Yes, I did. Now 30%. So if we look at the range right here, we're adding plenty more aces to it, taking away some of the stronger ranges or some of the stronger aces. But there's plenty of better kings. But there's a lot of there's a lot of worse queens and jacks and stuff added to it. But I'm gonna say our equity is not going to go above 42% with a King 4 off. It will not go above 42%. Wow, I'm off 46% again. Man, you can see my equity understanding is not where it should be. 30% range. So we could see, okay, the ace 6 versus the King 4 offsuit. 35, 32, 3% less, 42, 6% less, 52, 6% less again. So that King 4 offsuit is a much weaker hand than the ace 6 offsuit. If you are raising out of the cutoff and you expect somebody to call, you definitely want the ace versus the king faux show. All right, so let's look at the worst non-king. Let's look at some other kind of random hand. Queen, we don't need to look at a queen. Queen 8. Let's look at some kind of a... Let's look at a suited gapper. Last time we looked at 7-6 suited. Let's look at like 8-6 or 9-7 or... There's an 8-6 right there. 5s, 4s. No, I think that's the lowest suited gapper, 8-6 suited. Let's take a look at that puppy here. Now let's look first. Let's see here. Where is it at? 8-6 suited. 8-6 suited hits only 29% of the time. King 4 offsuit hits only 18% of the time. Wow. I got to make note of that. Holy cow. But it's a less... That's what I want to say. So weaker flopping hand. Faux show. Definitely right there. So that's the King 4 off. We're going to go with the 8-6 suited here. Take a look at this. What was the ace 6 offsuit? How often does that hit? This hits we looked at. I just don't remember what it was. 22% of the time. Oh, ace 6 offsuit hits. Oh, that's right. Of course that happened. Cool beans. Okay, so 8-6 suited. Let's take a look here. Oh man, screwed up. Sorry, everybody. Taking notes as I go so you can see the kind of things that I look at. There it is, 8-6 suited. Bam, bring that up. Okay, now we're good to go. Okay, 8-6 suited hits the flop. 28.5% of the time. 29%. Good. Okay. And that ace-6 was 22%. King-4 was 18%. King-4, 18. Ace-6, 22. Ace-6 hits 29%. Good. Yeah, so you can see right there that ace 8-6 is actually the best hand that you want to see a flop with. If you had to choose to go post flop, most people would probably choose the ace-6 offsuit, and I might still choose that as well, just because of that high card strength. But it is more difficult to play post flop. If you hit a top pair, you don't know what to do. Ace-6 suited has more post flop potentiality, and it's easier to play. You're gonna either completely whiff flops, you're gonna hit some kind of a draw, or you're gonna hit some kind of a good two pair, sneaky two pair kind of a thing. Where ace-6 offsuit just hits some kind of a pair without a good kicker, and you're just not happy with it in general. That's why the 8-6 suited hits so well. So let's take a look at the 8-6 suited. Let's go diamonds today. Not that it matters. I just, whatever. Got to choose something. Choosing diamonds. So 8-6 suited versus the 5% range. We're looking at 34% equity. 34%. Now let's compare that real quick. Roughly the same as ace-6 offsuit. Good, and better than the king-4 off. I'd much rather have ace-6 suited any day than king-4 off if I was forced to go to the flop with a hand. But in a cutoff, I would steal with either one based on the opponents. And if you go post-flop, you go post-flop. But that's one of the reasons why we're studying this stuff, is because sure, I want to steal with it, and my goal is to succeed with the steal. But sometimes you got to go post flop, and it's good to know your equity versus their ranges, and looking at their ranges and seeing what kind of hands and having a visual representation of what they're possibly calling with will help you when you're faced with that post flop action. So 13% right here. Currently, we're at 35% equity with the ace-6 suited. I'm going to guess it's going to jump up to roughly 41% or so. Let me see. Well, actually, it adds 13% adds a ton of the overcards, a ton of suited connectors that have a higher rank than us. Tons of overcards with that right there. Actually, it won't go up to 41% or 42. It'll go up to 40%. 39%. A little bit closer this time. 39% equity versus 13%. Let me make a note of this real quick right here. Tomorrow, flop work with calling ranges. It just occurred to me what I want to study tomorrow is looking at various flops with whatever card I have, looking at various flops and how these three ranges, 5, 13, and 30, how they hit those flops, and looking at random flops and just assessing the strength of our hand versus their range on various flops. That's what I want to do tomorrow. So just making that note for me right now so I don't forget. Let's see where we at. 13%, 39% equity. Yep, that's where we're at. And oh, it's already 6:15. Got to get the kids up pretty soon, ready for school. So let's see if we can't finish this out. So 30% range. We're looking at 43. I should have guessed it ahead of time. Dagnabbit. 43% equity versus 30% range right there. Great. So we can see all these different hands that we're opening from the cutoff. A lot of them are steal hands. They're not value hands. I shouldn't say a lot of them. They're all steal hands. All these ace-6 off. I'm not opening for value. King-4, 8-6. They're not value hands. They're steal hands. Occasionally you get called, and it's a good idea to know what your equity is versus the different calling ranges. So this is the kind of stuff that will help me in my play session later today. So let's bring this over. That was the database review. Okay, so today in my play session, I've already decided ahead of time my warm-up for today. So before the play session, I look over these notes. I look over these notes up here to kind of refresh as a just a way to prepare my mind for the session I'm about to play and the focus of my session. So today I'm going to play two 25 NL tables at about 45 minutes to an hour. I'm not sure when or how long it'll be, but it'll be roughly there. I'm not going to come in just for a 30-minute stream. I want to make it a little bit longer at least. And why am I playing? It's to improve my skills versus 2-bet callers. So all of this work that I did today and yesterday, the whole goal is to improve my game versus people who call me. And just to basically improve that game so I have a better understanding of how their ranges hit the flop and whatnot. Am I in my A, B, or C game? Hopefully A, but I'll let you know later today before the session, or as the session begins, what kind of mind frame I'm in. If I played right now, I'd be in A game. That's because I'm studying right now. When I study poker, I get into A game poker mindset, so I do like to review my notes before. It helps me get me back into poker. My strategy focus is going to be assigning accurate pre-flop calling ranges. So let's look at a table real quick. Come on, stats pop. Okay, good. So this guy has a 19% calling range, which is a little bit higher than the 13, less than the 30%. So when I think about a 19% calling range, it's going to look like this or so. So not any suited double gappers, but every suited ace, all the Broadways, of course. He's taken out, because this Clementine, this particular player, is a bit aggressive. Most pairs and the good aces are getting 3-bet right there, especially if they're in the button and I'm in the cutoff, So you want to think about stuff like that. 13%, this is the range that we've been looking at. 20%, 22, 20. Let's see who do I have a lot of hands on? Clementine or Cement. I have a lot of hands on you. So your call 2-bet is 30% out of the big blind. This is perfect. This is the range that we've been looking at. We've been trying to target this whole time. The wider the calling ranges, the better. You want to 3-bet them, not 3-bet. You want to open against them 2-bet when they're in the big blind all the time. So these two, I just want to open. They see flops way too wide, out of position, which is lovely. Let's see how often they fold to C-bets out of position. Out of position on the flop, fold to C-bet, 56%. So this person isn't so flop honest. Doesn't look to be too turn honest either, out of position. So we'll see. They don't, maybe once they're in the pot, they don't like to give up. Let's see, what is their, went to showdown. 1 win soft flop, 45%, not too bad. 1 at showdown, 27. That's pretty low, 27%. Went to showdown, only 20%. So they either fold somewhere pre-flop or they use aggression to take it down. So they don't go to showdown all that often. 1 win soft flop, 45%, not too bad. So I think they use maybe some well-timed aggression to win pots. Cement, I think, is a pretty decent player. At this time, I only have 350 hands. I'm not sure what my total is on them now, but I have a pretty decent amount. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be looking at that call 2-bet percentage to assign him a range. My strategy focus, my HUD stat is the call 2-bet percentage. Now my 5-minute question, it's often the same question, but I'll change it occasionally. This time it's going to be, is this table still profitable? I've really been working on looking at finding the most profitable tables, getting on those tables. As soon as the fish lose their money and regs come in because they're on the wait list, I want to constantly pay attention to see who's at my table to know whether I need to get out or not and find a better table. My logic statement, my skills will win out in the end. Logic statements like this help me deal with a possible onset tilt, that kind of thing. And then tomorrow, of course, we'll work on flop work with calling ranges as well. So what I want to do from now on is by 8:30, maybe 9 a.m. every day, I want to send out the post-study session email to review what we covered and to get you prepared for the next day. I sent it out way too late last night. That doesn't give anybody a chance to prepare. So I'll be doing it much sooner from now on. Yep, alrighty. So I think I am done for the day. It is 6:20, time to wake the kids up and make them breakfast. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Have a good day, and I'll catch you on the flip side.